Welcome to Revisiting the Vault, a podcast where we're looking at the history of art, animation, music, and just about everything else, but through a Disney lens. I am Mary Ratliff. I am a filmmaker, screenwriter, general nerd for the written word and creative projects.
And I'm Gretchen Harwell. I am none of those things. Well, maybe written word nerd, but I am a mom to a daughter who absorbs Disney culture, and I love to sew and I love fashion history. There is some of that in this one, at least.
And music.
Oh yeah, I am a musician too. I forgot about that. A former musician. So there is some of that in this too. So we got it.
Yeah, we've got this. As we were talking right before we hit record, we are not Disney adults, which is a term that has become a bit of a topic on the internet as of late while we're recording. I don't know if you've run across this.
I have another pen pal who is not you or our friend Brian, and she is a Disney nerd. She is hardcore. Her enthusiasm is very fun.
Right.
For me as an outsider. I love those people who can get that hardcore about stuff. I personally can't. Or at least not about Disney.
I do have some friends who are Disney adults. I mean, the fact that they love it makes me like it more because they gave me a perspective I don't see.
Yes. Well, and since we last recorded, in the listening world, you can't tell this, but it's been a minute.
Right. We had a slight hiatus. No one's going to know that.
Right.
But we should mention it just in case if we sound different or suddenly we have completely forgotten everything we have said before, because it's been a couple months.
It's been a bit. And I went to Disney in that time, not for the whole 2 months, which would have been weird. I did go to Disney during that time, and I had a wonderful time. I had a better time when I was there with my child and her friend than I did the time where I went, and there were other family members there, but it was largely just me and my husband doing our own thing. I had a better time this time with the kids, and I do think that the magic of Disney is initially geared toward children. It's contagious when it's kids.
Yeah.
These two girls, we took them on both of their first ever roller coaster, and from the word go, they were addicted. And so we were like, okay, let's do these rides. Let's have this fun. And we just decided to go for it and just kind of let it all wash over us. We just went for it. The girls got the backpacks. We all got the ears. It was so much fun. It was more fun than I've had in a long time. And other than getting COVID, I wouldn't change a thing. So I can see how people grow up to be Disney adults when they have that kind of experience. My first experience was not that, and I was just like, whatever, it's Disney. But now I get it a little more. I'm not a Disney adult. I don't think I ever will be, but I can see it now better than I used to. With that said, let's talk some movies.
All right, so the project, we are going through and watching all of the Disney Animation Studios feature films, the ones that were released in theaters, and the ones that normally would not be any live-action animation hybrids. But this is a special episode.
Yes.
As we have mentioned previously, Disney Animation Studios really got their start on features right as World War II was dawning, and World War II was not great for the entertainment industry in a lot of ways, and especially not great for Disney.
Yes.
So they pivoted for a few years. Basically, we are going to be covering the years of 1942 to 1948. They're called the package films, is how people usually refer to them. There are 6 films total that they did that they were feature length in name, but they were not a feature length story. They were mostly vignettes, things that were put together.
Right.
Some of them only with 2 stories, some of them with as many. I think Make Mine Music, which unfortunately neither of us was able to watch, has like 8 or 9.
And that's the one I really wanted to watch because it has Betty Goodman.
I know. There's a lot of it that's on YouTube. The quality is hit or miss. But when I started clicking through on YouTube, I realized I'd seen quite a bit of it on Disney Channel growing up.
Okay.
As pulled out as their own shorts, because there's like the whale who wants to sing at the Met or something like that. I have definitely seen that one. And there's one that's like these 2 hats falling in love.
Like they do.
It makes sense when you watch it.
It's fine.
Because at Disney, they anthropomorphize anything. If it's female, they just give it eyelashes and lipstick. But no, I'd seen the hat one. So there were a few of Make Mine Music that I'd seen. And there were a few pieces of the other ones that I had seen pulled apart. But I had not, up to this point, ever sat down to watch the package films as films the way that they were released.
Right.
And I actually watched them all. We decided going in that we did not have to watch them all. We could both just sort of pick the ones that looked good to us. But I watched them all because in this hiatus, while you were gallivanting in Disney, I had back surgery.
Which is what you do.
Right, like you do. And so I spent a lot of time laying on the couch, which may have colored some of my opinions on some of these things. But
you should have done it while you were still on all the drugs. See how
I should have. I don't know. That might have made me angrier. The package shorts, I don't think they all have content warnings, but some of them should that don't.
Yes. Honestly, the ones that do could use a better one again.
Yeah. Smoking, drinking, racist depictions.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a content warning for sexism, but oh boy, should they.
Yep.
Going back to the historical context, we have the war. Disney's also dealing with the animator strike. His animators are all striking. It's very contentious. Disney's very angry about this. And so, randomly, someone from the U.S. State Department convinces Disney to go on a goodwill trip to South America to create a film that would be kind of I think they call it like the Good Neighbors program is what it was. And so they're trying to make South America, who was very friendly to the Nazi regime, several of those countries, like America a little bit better by sending Disney and his animators. And the result of that was Saludos Amigos, which is the first of the package films, which was popular enough that then they made Three Caballeros, which is not a direct sequel, but it's very similar. But what's interesting about that is while they've shipped Disney off to South America, the U.S. Labor Relations Board steps in. You know what? Your animators have unionized, sign the union contract. We're done. This is done.
Stop.
That solves that. In 1941, I want to say, which Saludos Amigos would come out in 1942. So it was very much those things were happening at the same time. And I just find it very interesting that Saludos Amigos was partially bankrolled by the U.S. State Department. You know, who knew?
Yes.
At the same time that they're doing this, they're also doing a lot of shorts for the War Department. There's a lot of like Donald Duck enlists kind of things. I think this might have been where they did the one where like Donald Duck pays his taxes. They used Donald a lot for these. Goofy a little bit too, but there was a lot of Donald. Not sure particularly why, if he was just more popular or if they were having fun playing with like the angry thing of his.
Right.
They're doing those propaganda films at the same time. And the propaganda films, which we did not watch, we're going to get into the racism that's in these package films, but those are worse. In the same way that the stuff that Dr. Seuss was doing at the same time was worse.
In their eyes, it was patriotic.
Right.
But when you look at it now, it is racist. It's just very straightforward.
So that's what's happening kind of like in the background while these package films are being released. And also Disney's basically bankrupt.
Yeah.
They spent so long making Bambi. It finally got released when World War II is in full swing. They are not doing well money-wise. They've recouped a little bit with Dumbo, but they're going broke. And so basically Roy Disney, who was always the money guy, who was always the one that was always nervous about Walt's spending, was like, let's just do some stuff that we can just get out there. Let's just do some quicker stuff. So that results in these package films. And you feel it. You feel it.
Yeah, you do.
The package films, just to get the list out of the way, because we're going to probably jump back and forth and do it thematically rather than chronologically.
Right.
Saludos Amigos, which is, they literally have a narrator who's like, we did a tour of South American countries, and here are some of the things we saw.
Yeah.
And then Three Caballeros, again, does a lot of stuff with South American countries and topics. Also has a bit about Mexico that's really weird. Make Mine Music and Fun and Fancy Free. Make Mine Music, they describe as like the pop music Fantasia, so it really is kind of music videos a little bit. I don't know that I call it pop music, but I guess it was 1946, so my idea of pop music is maybe different than 1946. Fun and Fancy Free is just two shorts that were supposed to be features. Melody Time, which again, pop music Fantasia, same idea. And then The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, which I don't know if those were ever intended to be features, but it's just basically two 30-minute shorts put together.
Right. To your point about 1946 and pop music, I think to some degree, they didn't really start heavily marketing to young people until the boomers were coming of age. And so in 1946, what was popular music was not the same as what would have been popular music a little bit later on. It's kind of probably the 1946 version of pop music.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't Elvis. There wasn't the Beatles. It just wasn't that kind of, and to be clear, I was a classical musician. I am in no way an expert on the history of rock and roll or any of that stuff at all. But like, it wasn't the same then. And that music is what evolved into rock and roll and that kind of thing and pop, you know. So what was popular then was kind of, it was marketed toward older people. It was the parents and not the kids.
Thinking about it, the two that come the closest to what I would think of as pop, they're both two like swing/big band style numbers.
And that was very popular then. Benny Goodman was a huge star. You think about it now, and it's just like, go ahead, name a famous clarinetist. There's not a clarinetist who's a household name,
right?
The way Benny Goodman was.
Talking about household names, that's one of the things that you start seeing in these package films. Saludos Amigos, not so much, because Saludos Amigos is very much, it's like a vacation slideshow kind of thing. It's, look at these places that we went. They've got a little bit of footage of the actual places. And then they're like, this place inspired our animators. And then they'll show like the animators on the plane, like drawing on a napkin. And then it'll become the short that you're about to watch. And some of the shorts are very directly related. There's a whole thing with Goofy as a gaucho. This is very specifically to that time and place. But some of it, they've got one that's about this little airplane that is the only thing they do about Chile, which I did not like the little airplane story. I was very bored by it. Like I said, Disney will anthropomorphize anything. That one I did not love. And apparently there was a guy in Chile who also did not love it and created a very beloved cartoon character as a direct response to it, because he was like, we have more to offer. And so he created like a little condor that became really famous there. There are some parts of Saludos Amigos that are enjoyable. And what was interesting was it was one of the first times that they had actual footage of metropolitan areas in South America.
Right.
When I was watching it, I definitely got this feel of it being that sort of white people go to Africa and they're like, look at all of the huts, and ignoring the fact that South Africa is full of metropolitan cities. But they did actually show the cities, and they showed actual people from these cultures. It was very much, this is a 1940s white men view of these cultures.
Yes.
But it was also the first time that these audiences would have been exposed to it in that way. And so it's one of those where I'm like, I feel like the scales kind of balance out okay on Saludos Amigos. Because they have, like, the parrot who shows up, whose name I cannot say. Like, his first name's Jose, so that's great. His last name, because the thing is that I studied Spanish. I did not study Portuguese.
Oh, and Portuguese is hard.
It's hard. So Jose is a parrot character who is based on a popular character that already existed. Other than the fact that he's chomping on a cigar literally the entire time, that's part of his character.
Sure.
It's the 40s. Okay. I think he's fun. He's like, you need to learn how to do the samba. We're going to take you to Rio. He takes Donald around and they have fun. This is, again, part of the thing was I was like, we're not going to talk about the live action hybrids, but Saludos, almost all of these actually have more live action than I thought they were going to.
Right.
Some of the ways that they mix it with those. Saludos Amigos, though, is very much like you might have a little bit of a transitional element, but it's very much we're in a live action scene, now we are in an animated scene.
Right.
It wasn't quite what happens with Three Caballeros. Three Caballeros, they just mix it up. It's just all in there.
Well, and I kind of had the feeling that, that could be a cost-cutting measure.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't have to pay animators that you're mad at, for starters.
Right.
Also, they were like, oh, this is a cool thing we can do. We can integrate animation into live action. Let's show off.
Right.
And to some extent, I think they were like, we got this down. Let's use it. It's cheaper. Well, I don't know that it's cheaper.
Well, it apparently was one of Roy Disney's ideas on how to save money, was to do more that mixed it. Yeah. Live action, as a filmmaker, I'm going to hate myself for saying this, but live action is a lot less of a lift than animation in a lot of ways.
Exactly. And you don't have an entire extra department in the animation department. You've got the actors. You've got all that stuff. You've got the story. You got to pay for all that. You don't also have to pay animators.
Yeah. When you're doing live action, you have a script. You do multiple takes. It takes a long time. These live action parts, even if they were only 5 minutes, probably took days to film.
Sure.
I've been working on commercials where you work for 5 days and you've shot 2 30-second shots.
Right.
At the same time, they are kind of just, then they're done. Then you edit it.
Right.
Whereas the way Disney at this point was animating was he wasn't storyboarding as much as they do later. They were animating long sequences that got lost. They were like, this isn't working, and they would get rid of it. I mean, that would be months and months of
work.
Dozens of men working on this that would just get tossed out the window. And so I think the live action really saved them a lot of money because they also did not have their animation workflow down to what they probably do now.
It was not the well-oiled machine that it has become.
Right. So it definitely, Roy Disney said, let's start doing more of this hybrid stuff. I looked it up because I wanted to know when was the first time that they mixed animation and live action. Apparently it was the first time anybody made any animation on film, or one of the first. It was very, very early. Mm-hmm. And it was basically a story convention that happens a lot later and continues to happen now, where someone is drawing a picture and the animation starts doing things.
Doing its own thing.
Yeah.
Yep, I can see that. Also, for that being brand new, I can see people being like, what just happened?
Right.
Just like, how cool is that you can do that when we just didn't have that before?
So it was the Enchanted Drawing in 1900.
Wow. So cool. Yeah.
It's one of the earliest examples of animation of any kind. I want to say animation that actually, like, still exists or was put into a more permanent format, because I'm sure people were animating things with, like, flip books and stuff for eons.
Right.
It's on YouTube because the Library of Congress has it, because it is historically significant. But it's a guy that draws a picture, and then he, like, pulls the top hat out of the picture, and then it's in his hand, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So then Max Fleischer, who we've mentioned because he created Betty Boop, and he also invented the rotoscope, he also did a series of stuff where it was like the hand drawing interacting with the drawings, which Disney himself also did with a series, the Alice comedies, which was like an Alice in Wonderland thing. It was something that they were playing around with in shorts, kind of a lot, but it was still very much like the Saludos Amigos, where it's like, we have this live action, you might have this one shot where there's both in the frame, and then now we're in the animated section.
Right.
You have the interactions, it's like the hand interacting with the drawing. It's not as much as what starts to happen in these, where it's very much like the two characters on the screen talking to each other. I mean, the technique, obviously, not as good as it's going to get with Who Framed Roger Rabbit 40 years later.
Well, sure.
But you can see it even from going from Three Caballeros to Fun and Fancy Free.
Right.
You can see how they advanced that technique and got better at it. Fun and Fancy Free, they've got that one shot that I love. The guy's sitting down like a teapot on the table, and Jiminy is under it, and he has to, like, scramble out of the way.
Yes.
That, to me, was where I was like, this is where they're showing what they can do with this technique.
Mm-hmm.
This is where they're really showing it off.
And because it's like a finer detail thing, it's not just a giant hand reaching down into something. It's a little thing. And it was, like, I really, more than once, I don't know if I put it in our shared notes, but I put it in my notes. I was like, they've really got this down.
Mm-hmm.
They're really just kind of crushing that aspect of it.
And you can see the growing pains of it a little bit in Three Caballeros, I think, because they don't interact as seamlessly. And it does make me wonder, I think with Fun and Fancy Free, to me, it very clearly looks like they filmed the live action and then they drew the animation to go with it, so that it worked with the way that things were being placed and taken and done.
Right, right.
Probably drew almost literally on top of it. Not literally on the film frame, but like with the cells on top, I would imagine. With Three Caballeros, it felt a little bit more like they almost had their live action team and their animation team, and they told each other what they were going to do, and then they put it together as best they could.
Right.
Like, some of it worked a little better than others, but there's Donald dancing with Aurora Miranda, who is Carmen Miranda's sister, in a scene that's fun, but is the beginning of what I consider defamation to Donald's character, which continues throughout Three Caballeros. Because Donald is super into her and is trying to hit on her and everything. So they're trying to dance together. It's not quite like, it doesn't feel quite like they're in the same place. But it's getting there.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like they were working in separate rooms, basically.
It's something, but it's not as good as it could have been. And I think by the time they got to Fun and Fancy Free, they had figured out that technique and that they were doing it very, very well. Now, what they did it in service of...
you know, whatever.
Because this is the thing. Like, let's go ahead and get into this, because I watched Saludos Amigos very early in my recovery, and then the rest of them I kind of mainlined in, like, almost the same week. So some of this is from watching it all too close together, but the 1940s sexism I could not take.
It was brutal. So I only watched 2, and there was so much. I mean, first of all, you know, we don't have to go into depth on these movies yet, but like Ichabod and Mr. Toad, there is not a female character in Mr. Toad.
Right.
Period.
Which I don't know about The Wind in the Willows. I've never read it.
Right. I mean, it's possible their source material was completely devoid as well. That being said...
They still didn't think to add anything.
Right. And then in Ichabod, Katrina Von Tassel, they sing a song, what is it? That little coquette Katrina or something like that. And it's just, she's not nice. It's not a kind depiction of women in general.
Right.
And she is more or less catty set dressing. She's there to fill something. Just... Ugh.
This is Saludos Amigos and Three Caballeros. Pretty much all of the women that show up in those are live action. And so those are actual depictions of women, but Donald gets really lecherous in Three Caballeros.
Gross.
Donald Duck is my favorite of the Mickey and Friends characters. I just really identify with his frustration in life.
Sure.
I love Donald Duck. And so I'm watching this. On the one hand, I know that this was created by Walt Disney, so I can't say that it's a mischaracterization of his character, because it is his character. They did make it, but
Right.
because there's a scene where they go to a beach where they're like, look at all this hot stuff on the beach, and it's a bunch of women in 1940s bikinis, so quite covered, to our standards, quite covered.
Still.
It's all of these ladies, and then Donald jumps off of their magic flying sarape. He's running around on the beach chasing after these women, where they're all being like, oh, haha, you know, this duck, and they're flirting with him, sure.
That's gross.
Again, the animation is not very good right here. It doesn't feel like they're in the same place in the same time. And it's gross. Donald's friends are like, oh, you wolf, you, and look at him flirting with all the girls. And they do eventually, like, get him to go. But then he has a whole extended thing where there's a woman singing a love song to him, and because she kisses him, he goes into some sort of weird drug-fueled haze. They literally, on Wikipedia call it the love is a drug sequence.
Okay, and also, can we just talk about, again, sometimes the target audience for some of these movies is a little muddled, in my opinion.
Very.
But knowing that there are going to be children watching this, is it any wonder that there have been generations of men growing up that thinking it's okay to do that?
Right.
And I'm not saying there's a direct line, oh, it was Donald Duck's fault.
Right.
If that was the messaging they were receiving.
Because it's played for laughs.
Exactly. And it's not funny. If that was the messaging they were receiving, even from an animated duck, are we surprised?
By the time that you get to the ones where you have actual animated women, which, again, Make Mine Music, I didn't really watch the whole thing, so I don't know that I can speak to that one. There is a whole thing with a swaying jukebox that I do remember parts of, and it's a very particular animation style that was popular at the time that's kind of fun. But in Melody Time and also in Sleepy Hollow, the women are drawn like World War II bomber art. What is happening, and why is this happening?
Yes.
Katrina looks like she belongs on a nose cone.
Yep. She's also dressed like Bo Peep.
Yes, the women are always in giant petticoats.
Like, what time period does this take? Are we in 18th century France? No.
Yeah.
What was happening?
Because there's a whole thing, I think it's in Melody Time, it's like the wintertime one, where they go ice skating. And she ends up falling, and it upsets her petticoats and, like, her layers of dresses. And he's laughing at her, and so she, like, stalks away and whatever, dude. And I wrote in my note, because he's, like, going after her and trying to be like, hey, come on, come back, whatever. No, dude, you owe her an apology. You just laughed at her.
Yes.
You actually were a dick.
That's the thing. Quit being an a-hole.
Right.
And apologize. Suck it up. Swallow your pride.
The outfit she's wearing, where are we supposed to be in American history that this is happening? And then, of course, the end of the short, she ends up going onto a patch of thin ice in the river. It breaks apart, and she passes out because she's so afraid of the danger. The squirrels and horses and birds save the day.
Naturally.
But she's passed out, so the dude gets the credit because she wakes up in his lap. He did nothing.
Of course.
But she's still just like, oh, my hero. The birds and the squirrels and the horses are all fine with this. Okay, sure. This is one of the things I wrote in my notes. You know what? In Disney, squirrels do all the work.
They do. They do. I mean, the birds make the pies, so.
Right, exactly.
It's fine.
That one with the wintertime, the thing that bothered me about it while I was watching it is before he makes an ass of himself, and this is a shot they've used in a lot of stuff where he, like, skates the two hearts and then the arrows going through them with his skates. But it's just so much heart imagery. Lovey-dovey, look at this, isn't love wonderful, isn't this great? There's so many hearts everywhere. Who actually wants this? It's like the scene in Bongo where Bongo first meets, is it Lulabelle? That's the girl bear that, okay.
Violent girl bear.
When he first meets Lulabelle, it's all hearts and you've got the little Cupid bears. Who is this for? Who is watching this? Who wants this? Was it middle-aged women in 1940? Was it teenage girls in 1940?
Or young girls?
I can see, like, 9 and 10-year-old girls being told they should like watching that kind of thing, but I don't think they really did.
I can tell you, my 9-year-old girl is embarrassed by that kind of thing.
Right. I feel like kids aren't really quite, they're like, that's weird.
Right. So when she was younger, part of this was reinforced by outsiders and for sure not reinforced by me. The thing she liked about princess culture was get married and be in love.
Right.
But the actual, like, depiction of that kind of thing was too embarrassing for her to watch.
I can't think of any dudes that would be into this. I guess teenage women. Women that are, like, right about to get to the marrying age was who they thought that they were going for, but...
What young women do you know who want to watch a bear romance?
I was very confused. I was very confused by how over-the-top cheesy all of the romantic stuff was. I can't even get into Pecos Bill, which apparently is pronounced Pecos and not Pecos. Who knew? You didn't watch that one, right? With Pecos Bill.
No.
Don't. Just do not.
Cool.
Like,
Noted.
Nope. That's the one where I texted you and I said that Disney animators apparently sat down and thought we haven't been super racist in a really long time. Let's make up for it.
Yes.
Because it's the legend of, like, how the West was won or whatever. And so they're depictions of Native Americans, which only exist in, like, I want to say 10 to 15 seconds of this, but it is so bad in those 10 to 15 seconds that it may be rivaling what's to come with Peter Pan.
Boy.
So Pecos Bill, which apparently is the one that sort of became the most famous and that people talk about liking the best out of the Melody Time ones, I hated every second of. I hated every second of it because the sexism, there were so many things about it that I was not okay with. But I feel like a lot of people at the time probably would have been like, oh, this isn't so bad, because a lot of the times when they did finally have women, they were shown in that worshipful pedestal way. Oh my gosh, look at this beautiful creature in front of me who is just gonna make Donald lose his mind, and it's gonna make Pecos Bill lose his mind and stop paying attention to his serial killer horse named Widowmaker. Again, giant question marks. That
goes back to so many times so far in all of these movies when a male character, I won't say a man because half the time it's a duck,
right,
is in the presence of a beautiful woman, they turn into idiots.
Yes, very much.
We did discuss this before. Sometimes when you're in the presence of somebody you find attractive, you trip over your own feet a little bit. But this is to the point where it's just so exaggerated. And I get it. They're played for comedy. I get it.
Right.
Don't come at me. I understand. They were trying to make it funny. But after a point, it's just like, oh, for crying out loud. It really makes you kind of understand how far we've come in what we tolerate as the acceptable depictions of romance and behavior and all those things. And it does also, again, bring you back to like, all right, well, I kind of get why so many things were tolerated for so long. And it's nonsense like this.
These shorts and the way that all of these pieces depict relationships are very much in that mold.
Yes.
They are making sure that we understand that everyone in all of these is straight.
Yes.
They are straight. There's no question.
Even the ducks.
Even the ducks. Although, there is a part where Donald is chasing after the women, and because he's blindfolded, he accidentally kisses Jose, the parrot.
Well, good. At least the parrot's a bird.
Yeah. It was one that at the end of Three Caballeros, which I had never seen, I had been interested in seeing because it's something that pops up a lot in like the Disneyana stuff. And, I knew the song, but I had never seen it. Everything I knew about the Three Caballeros was from the episode of the 2017 DuckTales revival cartoon. And in that, they were Donald's college band. The three of them got together and formed a band and then, tried to actually go on tour and make it as a band and didn't and broke up. They go on vacation together and they have to do, another performance together to kill a carnivorous plant because it's DuckTales. But the DuckTales revival cartoon is actually excellent. I probably should have suspected that they had elevated their source material a little bit. If you watch that and you're like, what is this Three Caballeros originally from? I mean, I guess you could watch it. There's not a lot in it other than the blatant sexism where I'm just like, this is trash.
Right.
It's not like Bongo. Do we want to go ahead and talk about Bongo?
Let's do it because, whew.
Bongo is from Fun and Fancy Free. Fun and Fancy Free was basically, it has a framing story, has two framing stories, but is two shorts. One is Bongo, one is Mickey and the Beanstalk. Those were both intended to be feature films. They were being developed as feature films, and then the war, the money, everything else, they decided to go ahead and make them into shorts. Neither one of these would survive as a feature, in my opinion. There's no way.
No.
But Bongo especially. I'm already in a bad mood when Fun and Fancy Free starts because Jiminy comes out singing a song. Fine. He's like, oh, I try to be fun and fancy free. That's my life philosophy or whatever. Sure. But then he tells Cleo, who has come back so that we can see her flirty eyelashes again.
Right.
He tells Cleo, your problem is you worry too much. Everybody's worrying too much these days. And then he opens up a newspaper to talk about how everyone's way too worried these days in the 1940s.
Right.
And the newspaper headlines are, Oceans will gobble Earth, scientists forecast. Inflation foreseen by economists. And extinction threatens world's millions.
Yes.
We should have been worried about those things then, because we should still be worried about them now, because they are and were problems.
Yes, turns out that paper was right.
I know, I'm so mad that apparently Jiminy Cricket is a climate change apologist. Jiminy, come on. Jiminy.
Yeah.
First the voice actor is the racist crow, and now Jiminy's a climate change denier. This is hurting my soul.
I had put in my notes, like, fun and fancy free, and like, okay, there's a tobacco warning.
There should be one on, like, everything that they made before, like, 1955.
Right. The thing is, in the other movies, let's say Ichabod and Mr. Toad, it's got both of the stories they're talking about in it.
Mm-hmm.
This one has the name of the song at the very beginning of a set of short films. It has nothing to do, really, with the second story at all. And so they were like, what are we going to call this one? Oh, song title.
He's singing about this as his philosophy to be fun and fancy-free, and neither one of the shorts back up that philosophy.
No. This first one, the bongo story, it's got Dinah Shore, and she also did voice work for Make My Music, and to my knowledge, those were the only Disney collabs she did.
Well, these package films are very star-heavy.
I noticed that. And that was the other thing, is like in Ichabod and Mr. Toad, which is the other one I watched, they got Bing Crosby.
Right.
That had to be a get. That's a big deal.
The Latin American stars that they have in Saludos Amigos and Three Caballeros are big names.
Yeah, big deal.
Sure, they didn't get Carmen Miranda, but they got her sister.
Yeah.
But how well they actually use that star power is probably going to have to wait till next time, so you should subscribe so that you don't miss it. Revisiting the Vault is a 9-Hour Films production, and it's edited by Mary Ratliff. Our music is by Music Motion and Lynn Publishing. We are not affiliated with or authorized by the Walt Disney Company. You can find us on Twitter at Revisit the Vault, and you can find our website at revisitingthevault.com. Don't forget to check out our Patreon. Patrons can get personalized thank you cards, stickers, and access to deleted scenes and outtakes. You can find that over at patreon.com/9hourfilms. If you want to support us, the best thing you can do is to tell other people about the show, and make sure that you leave a review in whatever app you're using to listen. Thanks so much for listening. See you next time.